This is your Unit 5A, Day 4, video notes. In this video, you are going to practice skills within Standard 3A, I can interpret key features. So we are going to practice determining a slope from a numerical representation, which is a fancy word for a table. So make sure you put this in your notes. All right, we've been practicing finding slope from a graph, and now we're going to find it from a table. So when you see tables that you're going to use to find slope, they might be horizontal like this, or they might be vertical like this. So in this table, let's say you had 1, 2, 3, 4 like this, then it would be 1, 2, 3, 4 like that, and same thing. All right, our y's, let's say it was 2, 3, 4, 5, vertically 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so same exact thing. We have x's and y's, just one is horizontal and the other is vertical. Okay, so how do we use this information to find the slope? So to find our slope, also known as rate of change, we will need to follow similar steps that we used to find the ratio in our last unit. Remember that ratio was a fraction comparing two numbers or two things. But this time, however, we're going to focus on one thing, and it is super important. This part is very, very important. Your ratios are always for slope. It is going to be the change in y. Whoops. All right. It's always going to be, here we go, the change in y, which remember is your up and down on your graph, over the change in x, remember, which is your horizontal. Okay, very, very, very important. You always have to do the y on top and the x on bottom. That's why when you were calculating slope from a graph, you would go, when you wrote your fraction, you always wrote the number that was up and down on top, because that's your change in y. All right, so there's two ways we can do this. You can use the slope formula, which is my preference, or you can use this table determining the difference. Okay, so how do we use the slope formula? Well, slope, which is represented with the variable m, is equal to, remember, change in y, so y sub 2 minus y sub 1. That is the difference in y, or the change. So how do I know what y sub 2 is and which one is y sub 1? Well, what you're going to do in your table is you're simply going to just label these y sub 1, y sub 2, y sub 3, y sub 4. Okay? You're going to do the same thing for your x. X sub 1, x sub 2, x sub 3, x sub 4. Now that you have these labeled, you can go ahead and you can plug the numbers into your formula. So we can see first we have y sub 2. So we have y sub 2. All right? That's where that comes from. It's y sub 2. Okay? Next, we have y sub 1. Well, y sub 1 is right there. So y sub 1 is right there. So all you do is you go to your table and you find the 2 points. Y sub 2, negative 2, goes there. Y sub 1 is 1, so it goes there. And remember, it's the change, so you have to subtract. So we have negative 2 minus positive 1. Negative 2 minus positive 1. Now we're going to do the same thing on the bottom. We have our x sub 2, x sub 2, x sub 2, minus x sub 1, x sub 1, x sub 1. All right, and so we can even just highlight this so you know where this came from. There you go, there you go. All right, so now that we set up our formula, the next part is pretty easy. All you have to do is subtract. Remember, we're finding that change, which is the same thing as the difference. So negative 2 minus 1 is equal to negative 3. And 5 minus 3 is equal to 2. So what is the slope? Negative 3 over 2. We're going to do some more practice, so if that felt overwhelming, no worries. We're going to keep practicing. Okay, so now we have another way, determining the difference. When we are determining the difference or change, difference and change, same thing, we are subtracting numbers. So what we do is instead of labeling our points like this, we find the difference between each point. And we start here on the bottom. So we have 0 minus negative 1. 0 minus negative 1 is 1. Because remember, when you subtract a negative, it's adding. Use your calculator. 0 minus negative 1 is 1. Negative 1 minus negative 2 is 1. Negative 2 minus negative 3 is 1. So we know the change in y is 1. Right? And then we'll do x. Remember, change in y always on top, change in x always on bottom. And it's the exact same thing. We're just subtracting 2 minus 5, 2 minus 5, negative 3, 5 minus 8, negative 3, 8 minus 11, negative 3. So what is the change in x? Negative 3, okay? And remember, when we write slope, we always just put our negative number on top. So it would be negative 1/3, like that, okay? Perfect. So this one, the thing that you really need to remember is that you got to start here at the bottom, and all of these numbers should be the same. If they're not, you made a mistake, or it is not linear and you cannot find a slope because there isn't a consistent rate of change. So when you're doing this, all of these should be the same. All of these answers should be the same, okay? All right, let's move on. Okay. Here is another example, and I'm going to do this example, and then you're going to have a chance to try some on your own. So even if you feel confident, please just stick with me for a little bit longer. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to label my points because I'm using the slope formula for this one. So I have y1, y2, y3, y4. All right, same thing with my x's. x1, x2, x3, x4. All right, so my formula is y sub 2 minus y sub 1 is equal to x sub 2 minus x sub 1. All right, so what you're going to do now is find your y sub 2. Well, we already labeled that right here, y sub 2. So we are going to replace that first number in a 4. We're setting our formula up. We always know that we're subtracting. And our next step now is to find our y sub 1. Well, we labeled it already, y sub 1. And what is that? It is the number 1. So that is what our change in y over our change in x looks like. All right. Next, let's find our x sub 2. X sub 2 is 6. Minus, remember it's always subtraction, our x sub 1, which is 2. So 6 minus 2. Change in x is 6 minus 2. So now our last step is to go ahead and just subtract. 4 minus 1 is 3, and 6 minus 2 is 4. So the slope is 3 over 4. Okay, next one. Here, what we're going to do is we're going to practice determining the difference. So first I'm going to start with my y. And remember, I got to start here at the back first. So we have 10 minus 6 is 4. 6 minus 2 is 4. And 2 minus negative 2 is 4. And why is that? Remember, when you subtract a positive, or subtract a negative, it's positive. So 2 minus negative 2 is a positive 4, right? Remember what I said? Use that calculator. Now let's do our x. Remember, we start at the back. Negative 3 minus 1 is negative 4. 1 minus 5 is a negative 4. And 5 minus 9 is a negative 4. And you can see these are all the same and these are all the same. So you know that you have a linear relationship. You can find that slope. Well, our last step is we know slope is change in y. Well, our change in y is 4 over our change in x, which is negative 4. All right, remember when we write our slope, we are going to be writing, we just always put that negative number on top. Negative 4 over 4. Now here, negative 4 over 4, remember when you have a number and you divide it by itself, 4 divided by 4, that's equal to negative 1, okay? Negative 4 divided by 4 is equal to negative 1. So if you wrote your slope as negative 4 over 4, that would be fine. Or you can write it as negative 1 over 1. Okay? All right, I want you to go ahead right now, and I want you to try these two. You can use either slope formula or determining the difference. It doesn't matter which one. Okay, hopefully you tried these on your own and you got the same answers. Negative 1/2 is the slope for number 1. And for number 2, the slope is 2 over 4 or 1 over 2. Why could it be both of these? Is because 1 over 2 or 1/2 is the simplified fraction, okay? You could have done these either way, doesn't matter as long as you got the same answer. Now, if you did not get the same answer, you need to figure out what you did wrong and fix it in your notes. Okay, this is the last page, and this is for you to try on your own. I will give you the answers for both of these, so you can, after you try, you can come back and check these ones. The rest of these you're expected to do on your own. And this is how I know whether you watched the video and listened or not. So if this is not done, then your homework will not be counted as complete, okay? So this is really important. It helps me see if you did it and what you know, okay? So here we go. I'm gonna have you pause the video and then come back and check your answers for these two. Okay, hopefully you tried these on your own and you got the same answer as me. Negative 2 over 1 and 5 over 2. It doesn't matter what method you used. I simply used this method for this problem because I had more room over here for this problem, okay? If you did not get this one correct, I would check and see if you made the mistake when subtracting a negative, because remember, you have to add. That's why it's super important to use your calculator, because 3 minus negative 2 is a positive 5. Okay, same thing. Negative 6 minus a negative 8 means that you're adding 8. Negative 6 plus 8 is equal to a positive 2. So use that darn calculator. All right. This is the end of your long video. I hope you do well, and good luck.